on, you guys? Rasati here in Singapore. You're listening to the Night Owl podcast. It's about 10 o'clock tonight. I actually finished on time, you guys. Sunday night is always reserved for baby girl's hair, and miracle of miracles, I mean, seriously, medical miracle. I was able to finish her hair in a record 3.5 hours, which never takes that short. And yeah, the braids were a little bit bigger, but I feel pretty good about it. I think it's neat, and I'm happy with it. Anyway, that being said, I wanted to jump on here real quick because I have been looking at horoscopes, I've been looking at birth charts, I've been looking at all this stuff and trying to make sense of things, and it just occurred to me. Okay, I'm gonna lie. It's not that it just occurred to me. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks now because I think it's interesting that we have a tendency to explain away feelings and then not touch the feeling ever again. So let me explain what I'm talking about here. Right now, it just so happens that Mercury is in retrograde. I don't know if you know what that means, but generally it means that communications tend to break down, electronics tend to go haywire. It's what people are expecting to have happen. But with that being said, it doesn't deactivate the feelings that you're feeling. It doesn't mean that because Mercury is in retrograde that your feelings are not really what you're feeling. That doesn't invalidate any of those things. I need you to understand that. It's almost like saying, oh my gosh, I'm really miserable and I'm feeling out of sorts and I don't understand why. Like I'm up and down and just very, very moody and very cranky. I'm like easily irritable. And then you find out you have your period and you're like, oh, well, shit, that's why I have my period. That's not the point. Because whether it was your period or not, whether it's Mercury in retrograde or not, whether Mars turned direct or Venus, I don't know, whatever. I don't know all that stuff about astrology, but what I'm saying is, regardless of all those things, your feelings are still valid. Something happened to irritate you. You need to figure out what that was and why it irritated you. Because whether it's pronounced or not, it irritated you. So that's what I want to talk to you guys about. You need to stop justifying what you're feeling and then like just brushing it off. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Now I know I was hangry. That's why. Nope. You were irritated by somebody. There was a reason you were irritated by somebody. You need to figure that shit out. Granted, sometimes you got to dig deep and figure out if you were already in a mood and this is the icing on the cake. Somebody just added to your current situation and it got worse. But even then, there's something about that person that if you hadn't already been in a mood, it would have bothered you a little bit, but not to the extent that it did. It was heightened because there was something else added to the situation. I hope that makes sense. It's a little vague, but let me see if I can explain this a little bit better. I know, generally, when parents are stressed out about money or stressed out about, maybe it's a family situation that's kind of getting uncontrollable, that if a child were to suddenly ask for a little bit more information or a little bit more attention, they might react to them differently than they would if everything was calm. Okay? I get that. I understand that. But most times when you get irritated by your child, it's something you still need to look into because perhaps it's the way that they get your attention. Perhaps they know better and they can feel your energy and they're doing it a little more excessively. But the point is, there is an underlying something that still would irritate you, but maybe not to the extent of you like yelling at them or telling them off in front of everybody. Same thing within couples. Generally, there is something that you would just brush aside and be like, all right, it's not that big a deal. It's not that big a deal. But the fact that you would have to say it's not a big deal means it is still something that bothers you a little bit. That if you were just to speak up and say that this bothers me, it may not become something big later on. That's what I want you to focus on. Emotional intelligence means you stand up for yourself. You know yourself very well. You communicate what you need. And because you're aware of yourself, you are able to pay attention to the people around you and kind of become intuitive about what they might need. When you find yourself in situations where certain things upset you, but you don't say anything, it starts a precedent. I had a friend who loves to smoke. I don't like smoke. And I don't think I've ever had the conversation where I don't like smoke. A lot of times when we're out in public and they, when we first started talking to each other or hanging out, whatever, they would ask, do you mind? Nope, I don't mind. We're outside. I have no problem. But to be inside where the smoke kind of just lingers and it gets into your hair and your clothes and the furniture and everything else, it's a little uncomfortable to me. It's a little more than I can deal with. But I know because I care about the friendship, I haven't said anything. I haven't. It's their house. I'm not about to tell them what they can and can't do in their house, but I will brush it off and keep on going. But I also know that if I don't tell them at some point, they're going to take for granted that this isn't a problem for me. This is what we do on a daily basis. Little things that we don't think are a big deal and we don't want to make into a big deal that we continually let slide. If you have a problem with the salt content in food, you need to tell whoever's cooking. If you prefer not to have any shoes in the house at all, you need to let your friends and loved ones know. If you don't like being called certain names, maybe your name is quite long and people tend to truncate it for you. Maybe you don't like that. You need to let people know. If you don't speak up in those small moments, things tend to escalate with time. The closest example I could give you is if you were to hold a cup of water in your hand, like a full cup of water, about 8-ounce glass of water or whatever. If you were to hold it in your hand close to your chest, no problem. You could probably hold it for a while. But if you were to outstretch your arm and hold it, over time, it will begin to feel as if it's getting heavier and heavier. Why? Because of the way you've stretched your arm out. Because you're holding it over an extended period of time. It's not a comfortable position. But if you were to do that in your everyday life about things that really don't matter, and honestly, if they don't matter, you should be able to stand up for yourself, right? How is it that we spend most of our lives just brushing it off, pretending like it's no big deal? We're not going to talk about it. Why would I start a fight by saying something about something so small? But why not? The majority of arguments, misunderstandings can be alleviated if we actually speak up every chance we get. And maybe we push people away at first because they're not used to us saying no. But you know what? You learn so much about people when you say no to them. You suddenly realize exactly what they're there for. You suddenly realize whether you can count on them or not. And why would you ever want to wait until you're in a situation where you really do depend on them saying yes for them to say no? For you to suddenly find out that they really weren't down for you in the first place. That's the worst possible moment to be able to find out those things, don't you think? So, as silly as it might sound, I definitely named this podcast Mercury's Gatorade because I want to make fun of the concept. Yes, it is a real phenomenon. Yes, it does affect a lot. I don't know how or why, but it does. But I also know that once you find out, oh yeah, Mercury's in retrograde, that must be why blah 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 is happening. Oh, I'm just overreacting because it's affecting my hormones or my mood or my sun and moon and ascendant blah blah. I don't know. Once you find that out, what do you tend to do? You stop thinking about whether or not that thing really bothered you or not. It's suddenly null and void. And that's the part I don't want you to do. I want you to figure out what it is that bothers you. Whether it's big or small, it doesn't matter. Don't only put your foot down for the big things. Let people get to know who you are. Let people decide for themselves whether they really can or can't be around you. If you're always agreeable, if you're always just easy to get along with, no trouble, no boundaries, no rules, you will end up having to find out the hard way who you can count on and who you can't. And I would rather not find out later. I'd rather find out sooner. I want ride or die people around me. I want people to know who I am. I want to be happy in all of my relationships because I've let them know what I will and won't put up with from the beginning. Now, I'm not perfect at this. I'm still a work in progress. Most of my relationships, they know exactly what they can and can't do. There are a select few where I'm trying not to be difficult because they're going through a difficult time. But even then, I'm not really doing them any justice by not letting them know what they can and can't do around me. I hope this makes sense. I hope this gives you another insight. Don't use astrological phenomenon to explain away something that bothers you. If it bothers you for a reason. Whether you're stressed or not, it still bothers you. So why not say something about it and see if there's a chance for it to be changed? Because the last thing you want is to be at the end of a relationship trying really, really desperately to hold on and make it work, knowing full well you now have a laundry list of items that you are not okay with because you gave up the right to say something about it every chance it popped up before then. Save your relationships. Build really, really strong relationships. Friendship, parenting relationships, romantic relationships, work relationships, whatever. Relationships. Stop doing the situationship thing. There is no longevity in it. And you end up feeling alone at the end anyway. All right, enough preaching for tonight. I hope this helped you guys. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments below. And until then, I will catch you again, y'all. Bye.